and we're atoms that are trying to discover who they are, in another word, and that people we're vibrating energy, and I think that gets lost because there's two realities. Well, there's many realities, but there's two realities. I'm here, I'm talking to you, and my wife's in the other room. I'm going to make dinner tonight. These are all just reality, and the other reality is that we're just hauling ass on this rock. We're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. So many of them say, I don't want to generalize, but so many of them say the tunnel, bright light, and love. It can't be ignored. It's counterintuitive to try to dismiss them all.
All right, you're on the air. Be careful what you say now. All right, my friends, I am here with Michael Russell, and he's had an NDE experience that changed his life and set him on a path and direction that he's now following. And he's going to tell us a little bit about the NDE and mostly about how it changed his life. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, Blaine, and I guess my overriding mission, and I do have a couple of them, but primarily is to help bring NDEs into the forefront. It seems like currently we don't have a place at the table right now where it seems like many people are dismissive of NDEs, and I don't think we've been presenting ourselves in a way that would bring us to the forefront. So yes, it's very important to me that NDEs are given their rightful place in the conversation.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that needs to come into the mainstream consciousness much more, and all the things that we can learn from it.
Now, my personal experience, and I want to preface this a little bit by saying that I think that NDEs have been misnamed. They should be named short-term death experience instead of near-death experience, because many people, bona fide, have clinically been declared dead. And to say that it was near death is a little bit of a misnomer. In my case, it was not. I was in a very severe car accident. I was not head on with the dump truck, but yes, headlight to headlight with the dump truck, and was very severely hurt, had to be trauma hawked to the hospital. But when it happened, of course, this is a very subjective thing because I was out and I had to be resuscitated at the scene. What that exactly entailed, I'm not positive. I had a fractured sternum. I know that my heart was traumatized. I had multiple compound fractures, which, is a little gruesome to talk about. But,
ouch.
A fractured sternum, compounded, fractured hips. It was very severely, 3 weeks in the hospital, very severely injured. But I was absolutely and positively, and I have to use the word positively, changed. As far as my specific, was I up there with the white horses and the butterflies? It wasn't like that for me. It was, but I was changed to the point where it's changed my life, where I formed a nonprofit in 2019. My accident was in 2016. I formed a nonprofit in 2019 called the Positive Energy Fellowship .org, and you can go there if you like. But yes, I was dramatically changed, and I had a more positive feeling and a non-fear of death. And so when I was in my car accident and I did come out and I'm laying in the hospital, I knew I was different. I knew I was changed. I just wish I could articulate a little bit better that exact feeling. It wasn't a God thing. I'm a devout agnostic atheist, but I'm very spiritual in the respect that I know that there is an afterlife. I was confronted with it in some way that I can't articulate, but other people have, and that's what drew me to the NDE experiences. That people from today are telling us over and over again. And once again, whether they were from Copenhagen or Colombia, rich or poor, male or female, secular or religious, it didn't matter. They're coming back and saying very, very similar things. There was a tunnel, a dark tunnel. There was a bright light, and there was an overwhelming feeling of love and joy and bliss, whatever adjective you want to put to that. So if people of today from all countries are saying the same thing, what's the problem here? Why are we not sitting at the front of the table, at the head of the table? We have testimonies, thousands of them, from people of today saying similar things. I mean, there's only three things that can happen. Either you had a blissful type of experience, you had a negative or static type. I hear that a lot. There was a static, kind of like your TV at 3 o'clock in the morning used to be, just a non-event, or it was negative. And that is, I think, and is very rare that people say that there was a negative experiences, but that's the only three that you can have. And I think that we only have three ways of knowing. How do we know what happens after death? Ancient scriptures are one, and written by whomever in different languages that long ago, or we have science that is slowly but surely catching up, and they're defining what is consciousness and quantum physics, does not forbid consciousness surviving the death of the body. So there's an open door there. And the other way, of course, is people of today that have been there. They're telling us what happened. They're saying this happened over and over and over again. That is an invitation to the table, and this conversation needs to be moved forward aggressively.
I agree.
And if I can ramble for just a second, it's the stories that most people have are so poignant and so important to them. And they want to provide you with a lot of detail and minutia that sometimes it's difficult to listen to. And I know you have as well, but I've listened to hundreds of them. And I think the important thing is that we distill these experiences down. No one can read or listen to hundreds of these experiences. Every one of them's different, but they were either positive or negative, or nothing happened. So if they keep being positive, let's positively accept them as a very valid means of moving forward, that you can have a blissful afterlife. It's there for you. So how do you achieve it? How do you get there? And to the people that didn't have, that said that nothing happened, are they wondering, are they listening to people that had the positive ones and say, why didn't this happen for me? Well, I think that one of the most important thing is that all of these people came back. Every one of them, they came back and said, this is what happened. Now, the people that didn't come back, we don't know. If you've been dead 3 months or 3 weeks, or 3 days, no one has come back and told us. So we only can rely on the people that had this personal experience. Let's take them. Let's run with them. Let's make sure that people know that there is a blissful afterlife that can be theirs. And if you were brought back, you were given a chance to do it again. So that's my feeling in a nutshell. I'd like to hear your your input or direction that you'd like for me to follow from here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, can you? I guess I'm trying. I want to understand. I know you say you can't really articulate exactly what happened to you, and I'm not trying to goad you into doing that. What was your takeaway that you knew you were changed? I mean, or if you did you have any of these common aspects that you mentioned in it, or was it just a feeling that you woke up with, or I guess I want to kind of understand that.
Once again, I kind of preface this that it was so difficult for me.
Yeah,
Um, I knew when I got to the hospital, I said, what happened? Who saved me? And they said, the one nurse there said, you were resuscitated at the site. And what I felt was that I had experienced a, I don't want to say a blissful feeling. I was all of a sudden, I was unafraid. I was unafraid. I knew that this was something that I wanted. And I didn't see angels. I didn't see, people talking or any of those, or my dog Sparky from when I was young. The only thing that I felt was I felt elevated. I guess I could say that. It just came to me. I felt elevated. I felt like there was something there for me. And maybe I felt like I needed to give this to someone else too, that there was something that was real about this, and there was something that felt elevated. I wanted it again, but I didn't. Mine was not a classic NDE of the ones that I've read, the ones that I followed through
yeah,
on that are, people are minutely detailed on what they've experienced, and I'm so awed by that. I wish that I had that. And if I had that, and if it was like a dream that you had and you felt and you experienced and you woke up and you were, but you can't really put your finger on it exactly. So I'm probably not your ideal NDE guy, but I am your NDE guy because I understand that there's only one way to really know what happens after death, and that's by people that went there and were brought back right at the brink. What is that? What were you feeling at that? There's a nanosecond there from when you're transitioning. And if that, for that nanosecond, if you felt that joyous, loving, blissful feeling, that's heaven. What else do you want? That's
yeah,
what I would want for my family. I mean, ideally, I would want to see my wife and my children and my parents up in heaven, and we're playing bridge together, and it's beautiful feelings.
yeah,
I don't believe that. I believe that you can positively have a blissful feeling at death, and that is a heaven. And that's what you should be looking for. And that's why we follow the tenets of capism, which is compassion and positive energy. You
yeah,
don't need 10 commandments. People that are compassionate,
yeah.
you don't they don't want to kill anybody. They don't
They
want to
do it
steal from
automatically. Yeah,
anybody. They don't
yeah,
want to lie. They don't want to, if you're compassionate, if that's your core moral compass, what
yeah,
a fantastic way to live your life with positive energy, compassion, and positive energy. Capism. It's a beautiful thing. And it's very closely tied to NDEs. We now know that you do not need permission from one of the desert religions or one of the gods to achieve a blissful afterlife.
yeah,
That's earth shattering
yeah,
for people
yeah,
that did not have a voice, if they're not religious and they didn't have a voice. Now they do. Now they realize that heaven can be mine as well. And we just feel that if you live a life of that kind of compassion, that kind of positivity and willing to give that, why wouldn't that just translate? It just makes sense. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing where Catholicism is kind of a mixture of Buddhism, Stoicism, very important Stoicism, Taoism. These are, but take what you want from those. These are westernized form of Buddhism. We're
Right.
not asking for robes and to meditate 20 hours a day, but there's so many beautiful gifts from Buddhism that can really help you. And some of the tenets of Christianity,
Yeah.
some of the, do unto others. It's very important. There's so many, there's Sermon on the Mount. There's so many beautiful things from Christianity, from Buddhism that you can take. Nobody's giving you this guideline to say you have to eat in this specific food or pray in this direction. No, no, not for a second. None of that. You can live a really good and beautiful life and teach your children to be compassionate. They're not going to want to bully anybody. It's distilling it down.
Yeah.
It's KIS. We have a simple. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
KIS. And nobody's stupid here. It's just that it's a complex world, Blaine, that we live in, and you know it. And there's all sorts of emotions that go into it in your day-to-day existence.
Yeah.
Practice some mindfulness. Try to center yourself. Try to live a compassionate life. And I truly believe that this will engender a compassionate and blissful afterlife.
I think that's a really important message, Michael, and people need to hear that too. And by the
Yeah.
way, anyways, that's an important message. And I did want to say, by the way, that you're not the first one that hasn't had the classic that I've interviewed that hasn't had the classic interview. Those ones get more attention, because they're some of them are pretty fascinating, and like you said, I've listened to and read hundreds of them, maybe over 1,000. I don't know. I've been looking at them for a long time, and I think that's important. And I think you really articulated well the takeaway that we can learn from NDEs, to be a compassionate, a loving person. I think what the feeling that you described, that you had and that others describe, many people call it unconditional love, and you called it bliss, and so on. And people wanted that again, or they didn't want to return. I think that's an important takeaway from it. And yeah, and getting over all the religious dogma that has plagued our societies for centuries, for millenniums. And I think that's important. And I think we're in a time where that's happening. I think maybe some of those religions, they all started out with good intentions. And like you said, there's a lot of beautiful and good teachings in them. I see it, and I've studied quite a few of them. And I also have a religious background that I came through and came out of, thankfully. And I think that I see them. They're an ancient metaphor that has been continued through almost every religion and culture, and they're teaching the same lessons, except the majority of humanity hasn't been getting it.
Right, right.
And so I think the NDEs becoming popular now is an important thing that's happening that can help people get the core teachings, the good teachings from all of these different cultures and religions and things, and bring them
Right.
together without all the dogma and the rituals and all these kinds of things that people still think they need, And so, and
Well,
I'm not putting down anybody that's in those things. There's some people,
right.
thank God, they're in a religion, or they'd be out, doing things that we don't want
Yeah.
them to. But
Truly,
everybody's on
truly, and
their
I
own
think
journey.
that it's important to, and maybe a little bit, because you're talking about spirituality and you're talking about religion, and then you're inserting, or we must insert science in there. And I think that's important because people lose track of the fact that we are just atoms, and we're atoms that are trying to discover who they are, in another word, and that people were vibrating energy, and I think that gets lost because there's two realities. Well, there's many realities, but there's two realities. I'm here, I'm talking to you, and my wife's in the other room. I'm going to make dinner tonight. These are all just reality, and the other reality is that we're just hauling ass on this rock. We're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. A 22 bullet goes 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, this is fast, and we're traveling around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. You couldn't convince somebody that was the truth. You would be crucified for it, or dunked in the water or something. Back a few hundred years ago for even thinking that. Well, the fact is, that's what is happening right this very second. We are vibrating energy. And when we die, that vibrating energy feels blissful to some, it feels neutral to others, and it feels apparently negative to others, and to a smaller degree. So that science illustrates this for us shouldn't be strange at all. They're telling you exactly, this is what you're made up of, these proteins, these atoms, these molecules. This is what you are. And we come against the hard problem, as David Chalmers would say, of consciousness. Where does consciousness come into it? Why are we able to feel these things and to feel compassion and love, and these beautiful things that we feel, and these negative things that we feel? And I guess that's why we got this system of belief of capism, to try and help people deal with the day-to-day challenges that kind of prevent you from having that positive mindset, because it is a tough world that we're living in. It can be very, very sad and hurtful, but it can also be blissful, and you can also realize a blissful afterlife. And isn't that the point? Isn't that what we all want? And there's only one sure way at this point. It's the people that have been there. They're saying it again and again. And I've said it again and again, and I'll continue to say it. There is no other way. Other than the ancient scriptures, there is no other way to know. So let's listen to these people. Let's bring this NDE right into the forefront. Front page. It should be on the front page that people are coming back and saying what's happening. It's not just a few, it's tens of thousands. And you and I have talked in the past, well, briefly, about NDERF, which is it's the Near Death Experience Research Foundation.
Yeah.
Very important work being done over there by Dr. Jeffrey Long. These are some of the people that need our financial assistance. And these are the people that the Positive Energy Fellowship that I have is going to be receiving the attention. And Dr. Grayson over at the University of North Carolina, in the cognitive science research that they're doing, very important. Dr. Sam Parnia, up in New York, is very, very, these people put their careers on the line. These are famous doctors, oncologists and cardiologists. These are famous doctors, and they're saying what other people will not. They're saying that these people have glimpsed the afterlife, and we need to pay attention to them.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to remember too. Yeah, there is. I'm trying to think where it is. I've read so much stuff I can't always remember where I picked it up. But some of the ancient wisdom teaches that science, and I think they used the word religion, which was a translation of whatever, Sanskrit it came from or something, would actually come together one day. And and meaning, the principles, not necessarily the dogma that people have built around all the religious texts and things. Anyways, and that's what I see with quantum physics, especially, that we're all energy, and there's this giant field, that sometimes called the quantum field, and that's where your memories actually reside. They don't reside in your brain. Your brain is more of a receiver, you know. There's are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza? So that's an area that he goes into quite a bit, and it's really an interesting thing, and it has to do with how our thoughts create reality and
Oh, did
so
you say
on.
Dr. Lanza?
No, Dispenza.
Oh, Dispenza. No, I'm sorry. It's very difficult to hear you.
Okay,
Yes,
sorry
I
about
know.
that.
I do know him. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, and Bruce Lipton talks about this kind of
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
also,
Mhm.
and a few others. There's several others out there that, and we're finally starting. You know, there's still a divide. There's still the what do you call it? Orthodox scientists that they don't want nothing to do with it. It's all material science and that's it. You know, but more and more scientists now are looking into consciousness and looking at these things and epigenetics and that kind of stuff. And so it's really an exciting time to be alive. We're actually witnessing the
Yeah.
culmination of some of the prophecies of ancient scripture, if you will, or ancient wisdom in all the different cultures. And so I think it's a pretty exciting time. And the other thing that I wanted to say too, we're talking about NDEs. There's also, you don't necessarily have to die to experience the other side. You can do it through meditation, and also people are using psychedelics sometimes. Now,
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm not a big advocate of doing that regularly, perhaps, but it depends on the person. But I'm not against it either. I guess people have to follow their own heart in what they're doing.
Right,
But
right. No,
people who are
yeah, and there's so many approaches. And I did mention Dr. Lanza. Do you know his biocentrism? Biocentrism? I guess that's what it's called.
I'm not familiar with him. No.
Oh, it's very, very interesting about consciousness and how it's manifest. Dr. Lanza, you have to look him up in biocentrism. I don't know why I'm having such a tough time with that word, biocentrism. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a very, very, very interesting a book on it. And you're right. There's, you know, I've said before, we aren't the arbiters of who gets to experience what. We we feel like this is the most likely path by positioning yourself to vibrate in a very positive way, and that this can continue. But yeah, there's many cultures that have gone back thousands of years that are saying essentially what we're saying today. Everything is one. Everything is completely one, and you're part of it. And with science really starting to come up and bringing these truths with them, I think that needs to be paid attention to as well, instead of just paying homage to a religious dogma,
Yeah.
and that can be very, very challenging too.
Yeah. Well, and everybody's on their own spot on the path, so to speak. And so, I don't disparage anybody if they're into their religion, unless of
Right.
course they try to force it on you or push it on you or something. And I still don't disparage them, but it's like, get out of my face type of thing.
You're right. No, that can, yeah, because that's off-putting as
But
well.
most
And
of those people are good people, and it's kind of an anchor for them because they're not really searching for real spirituality, even though they think they're spiritual. And I was one of them once, and so I can relate. Although I never stopped questioning everything, which quickly got me into trouble with the religious authorities. When I was in that path.
yeah,
But
well,
thank goodness
it,
for that.
well, and I was raised a Catholic. I went, but it hit me very early. I was in the fifth grade, and it just wasn't for me. Some people are just built that way, and that's the way I was. I just never, I couldn't, and believe me, very few people have done as deep dive as I have in all sorts of religious. I've looked into them all,
Yeah,
and I've
me
come
too,
away
actually.
with unconvinced, but I am convinced by my own experience, and I'm convinced by NDE experiences and people that are coming back. And I, it, if they all had different, and they do have different stories, But if they didn't all say, or so many of them say, I don't want to generalize, but so many of them say the tunnel, bright light, and love, it can't be ignored. It's counterintuitive to say, to try to dismiss them all, because sometimes the people say, well, you were on an operating table and those bright lights were the operating table, or it's a religious experience, or it's the medications that you were taking. And no, you can explain away a few of them, but not all of them. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm so grateful for the people that are doing this, the gathering of all of this information for us, so that the more information that you have, the more to the forefront you can, and positively you can put this forward. So it's so important to support the people that are doing this research and putting their careers on the line to do this research.
I agree. Yeah, if anybody does the research themselves and looking into this, the whole dying brain theory thing is easily put to rest. That's been disproven way too many times. Too many people with zero brain activity have come back, and and Dr. Ibn Alexander is one of them. And he's actually fairly popular in the NDE community for his story, and his story is a pretty fascinating one too. But there's too many, and there are stories out there. I don't know that they've been corroborated, of people who've come back days later, and there's old stories of people who were at their funeral, woke up in the coffin and scared the bejesus out of everybody.
Yeah, right.
So, but I'm not sure if any of those can really be corroborated. Actually, there's one or two, I think, where there's been, people say, oh, they were only dead for a few minutes or so. It's not real, and I'm like, there's been people that have been dead for more than a day that have come back. So, and some of those are corroborated. So I don't remember specifically which ones, but I've read so many of them. I know there's a few out there. So, but
well, and I think that's part of my thrust, is that it's so important. All of these individual experiences are so important, but not in the sense to bringing the whole picture forward, because you can't go through each and every story and which ones are compelling and which ones are not. I think that in my view, to try and really bring this to the forefront, you have to condense it down, and saying that people had something happen to them when they died. You can just leave it there in quotes. Something happened to them. Maybe it's like me. Something happened and I was
yeah,
changed. And these people, and some of them have very specific things that did happen, and they're so similar. They're so similar. So if we can take this thousands of stories, of testimonies, and distill them down to tell people there is an afterlife. This can be a blissful one, can be yours. They're not all blissful, they're not all bad, they're not all static, but they're people coming back by the thousands that are saying they're blissful. Let's
yeah,
believe them. Let's align yourself, however that is for you, to where you feel like you are a compassionate and loving person. This will translate to the next life. I'm telling you, it will. And I think that it's just such and it is simplistic. I admit that this overriding theme is relatively simplistic, but maybe that's the beauty of it too. And if we can embrace that, if you can raise your children with a compassionate point of view and a loving point of view, you're setting them up for what is said and relayed to be a joyous afterlife. And what's better than that?
yeah, I agree. The vast majority of them are positive, and there's always exceptions to the rule, but that's the bottom line, right? How you raise your children. That's you're raising the future generations, and and let's be honest, the legacy of humanity hasn't been all that great up until this
Yes,
point.
true.
I mean, there's been a lot of good people and a lot of good things, but there's also been a lot of negative things that have happened in our history, and I do believe that we're in a transition, that humanity is trying to rise up in consciousness, and these NDEs are part of that, a big part of that, and helpful. And some people call it.
I do hope you have me back on because I would like to discuss, capism a little bit more in the future and how it relates to an NDE and how we can
Well,
position ourselves to live a better life. I mean, it's a win-win if you live your best life, and people will see it in you. Trust me in that. Once you get that feeling of compassion and positive energy, and you start wearing it on your sleeve,
yeah.
people will see a change in you, and it's a positive change, and it's going to lead to a positive afterlife. So in the future I would like to talk about that.
Yeah. So great message. And I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or any positive message you'd like to leave the audience with? Your message has been overall positive as it is, but any parting words before we go? Sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do. I think that you can change by taking the best of what's out there and not really glomming onto one kind of dogma. But if you look into Stoicism, look into philosophy and how to live your best life, look into Buddhism and take the best parts of it. Leave the parts that are ancient and don't apply to our world today. But there's so many good things to be had in the Vedas and the Upanishads and in Buddhism. Open your mind to all wisdom that's out there. But if you distill it down to just being a compassionate person, just being your best self, and know that that best self can translate and transition, man, what an opportunity that we've been given here. What a gift, because this is, as you know, we haven't been able to resuscitate people. This just came back with defibrillation techniques and CPR. We never could bring people back. And then they did sometimes come back, and they did relay story. There's many stories from ancient times about people having near-death experiences, but now they're coming by the thousands. So we live in a really, really great time to take this new information and use it in your day-to-day life, and to raise your children this way, and to have the best you. And once again, I'm going to close it by saying, people will notice it in you. They'll see the change
Yeah.
in you, and it's such a positive, once again, beautiful way to live. So that's my message in the short term. And I obviously, it's a huge subject, and I do have more to say, and I would like to espouse capism a little bit further at a future date. I'm going to beg you to ask me back on.
Absolutely, we will do this again, and and we can expand on capism, and I will link your website in the description also.
Appreciate that, and I admit that we have some work to do there. I've been a little negligent lately, but I'm back on it. So yes, thank you for that, Blaine. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on and taking the time out to do it. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I think you articulated it very
Okay, well,
well.
you're a good man, and you're so valuable. The world needs people like you, and I'm not just saying that. I'm not just stroking you there. The world needs people like you, and with an open mind and a forum to express these thoughts, and to gather people together, like-minded people. It's invaluable, Blaine. It really is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. So, thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you for having me.